or with Congress. That's why, working with people like Dick Durbin, who's been vocal on this for a long time, we've got to confront the gaping loophole that the Supreme Court recently opened in our campaign finance laws that allowed special interests to spend without limit to influence American elections. We've also got to get back to fiscal responsibility, and I spoke about this at the State of the Union. Just 10 years ago, America had a budget surplus of over $200 billion. Remember, people were worried about what might happen with all these surpluses and whether it would create problems in the financial markets. That was just a decade ago. After 2 wars, 2 tax cuts, prescription drug program, none of which were paid for, we faced a deficit of over $1 trillion, a debt over the next decade of $8 trillion before my administration spent a single dollar. Now, we can't change the past, but we can change the future. And that's why I'm asking you to adopt a freeze in non-security discretionary spending for the next 3 years. Starting next year, we're still having a tough time right now, given the economy is just starting to pick up steam. But starting next year, that's why I'm grateful that all of you restored the PAYGO rules that worked so well in the 1990s. I already mentioned the Fiscal Commission. We may not have been able to get the votes for a statutory commission, but I am going to appoint a commission by executive order because it's important for us to take these issues seriously, not just for us, but for our children and our grandchildren. Let me just wrap up by saying this. I know these are tough times to hold public office. I'm there in the arena with you. The need is great. The anger and the anguish are intense. The economy is massive, and so as a consequence, no matter what levers and buttons we press, sometimes it doesn't move as quickly as is needed to provide relief to so many of our constituents. In that kind of circumstance, I think the natural political instinct is to tread lightly, keep your head down, and to play it safe. I've said this before to this caucus. I just want to say it again. For me, it is constantly important to remind myself why I got into this business in the first place, why I'm willing to be away from my family for big stretches at a time, the financial sacrifices that so many of you have made, being subject to criticism constantly. Yeah, you don't get in this for the fame. You don't get in it for the title. You get in it because somewhere in your background, at some point in time, you decided there was an issue that was so important that you were willing to stand up and be counted. You were going to fight for something. And you decided you were going to run as a Democrat because there was a core set of values within the Democratic Party about making sure that everybody had a fair shot, making sure that middle-class folks were treated fairly in our economy, making sure that those who were on the outside had a way in that led you to get involved in public service. And that's what we have to remind ourselves, especially when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You look at an issue right now like health care. So many of us campaigned on the idea that we were going to change this health care system. So many of us looked people in the eye who had been denied because of a pre-existing condition, or just didn't have health insurance at all, or small business owners in our communities who told us that their premiums had gone up 25% or 30%, and we said we were going to change it. Well, here we are with a chance to change it. And all of you put extraordinary work last year into making serious changes that would not only reform the insurance industry, not only cover 30 million Americans, but would also bend the cost curve and save $1 trillion on our deficits, according to the Congressional Budget Office. There's a direct link between the work that you guys did on that and the reason that you got into public office in the first place. And so as we think about moving forward, I hope we don't lose sight of why we're here. we've got to finish the job on health care. We've got to finish the job on financial regulatory reform. We've got to finish the job. We've got to finish the job even though it's hard. And I'm absolutely confident that if we do so in an open way, in a transparent way, in a spirit that says to our political opponents that we welcome their ideas, we are open to compromise, but what we're not willing to do is to give up on the basic notion that this government can be responsive to ordinary people and help give them a hand up so they can achieve their American dreams. We will not give up that ideal. If that's where we go, I'm confident that politics in 2010 will take care of themselves. Harry, thank you very much. Let me turn it off to questions. Thank you. Thank you.
First question, Arlen Specter. And let me tell everyone, people have come to me and indicated they wanted to ask questions. I've taken a list of those. Arlen Specter's first.
Mr. President, I begin by applauding your decision to place the economy at the top of the agenda, to put America back to work and to provide jobs, jobs, jobs. I have a two-part question and just a brief statement of the issue. We have lost 2,300,000 jobs as a result of the trade imbalance with China between 2001 and 2007. The remedies to save those jobs are very ineffective. Long delays, proceedings before the International Trade Commission, subject to being overruled by the President. We have China violating international law with subsidies and dumping, really a form of international banditry. They take our money and then they lend it back to us and own now a big part of the United States. The first part of my question is, would you support more effective remedies to allow injured parties, unions which lose jobs, companies which lose profits, by endorsing a judicial remedy, if not in U.S. courts, perhaps in an international court, and eliminate the aspect of having the ITC decisions overruled by the President, done 4 times in 2003 to 2005 at a cost of a tremendous number of jobs on the basis of the national interest. And if we have an issue on the national interest, let the nation pay for it, as opposed to the steel industry or the United Steel Workers. And the second part of the question, related, is when China got into the World Trade Organization, a matter that 15 of us in this body opposed, there were bilateral treaties. And China has not lived up to its obligations to have its markets open to us, but take our markets and take our jobs. Would you support an effort to revise, perhaps even revoke those that bilateral treaty, which gives China such an unfair trade advantage? Thank you.
Arlen, I would not be in favor of revoking the trade relationships that we've established with China. I have shown myself during the course of this year more than willing to enforce our trade agreements in a much more serious way. And at times I've been criticized for it. You know, there was a case involving foreign tires that were being sent in here, and I said this was an example of where we've got to put our foot down and show that we're serious about enforcement. And it caused the usual fuss at the international level, but it was the right thing to do. Having said that, I also believe that our future is going to be tied up with our ability to sell products all around the world And China is going to be one of our biggest markets. And Asia is going to be one of our biggest markets. And for us to close ourselves off from that market would be a mistake. The point you're making, Arlen, which is the right one, is it's got to be reciprocal. So